A Saudi supertanker that was seized by pirates is now anchored off Somalia. The Syria Star was carrying a cargo of oil worth $100 million. The hijack a sign of the growing problems of pirates in the Gulf of Aden. There's been a 70% increase in pirate attacks off Somalia this year. Pirates there are believed to have made about $100 million in ransoms. But shipping companies have limited options. For decades, they've been traveling through the Gulf of Aden through the Red Sea and on through Egypt's Suez Canal, finally then into the Mediterranean, the quickest way to Western Europe. Star too big for the Suez. Instead, they travel south around Africa's Cape of Good Hope. But with the capture of the Syria Star, neither route now seems safe. Zaina Awad reports.
The captured Saudi oil supertanker is one of the largest catches for pirates who roam the seas off the coast of Somalia in what has now become a multi-million-dollar piracy business. The Saudi government compared it to some of the biggest security threats of today.
This outrageous act by the pirates, I think, will only reinforce the resolve of the countries of the Red Sea and internationally to fight piracy. Piracy is against everybody. Like terrorism, it is a disease that has to be eradicated.
This is another cargo ship that survived a hijacking and is back at bay in the Kenyan city of Mombasa. It may have escaped its captors, but the pirates did not let it go without firing a grenade into the ship, setting it on fire. Warships from the world's most powerful navies are patrolling the water around the Somali coast. Russian, French, and American Navy are all in hot pursuit, following an unprecedented surge in piracy. But they're being outmaneuvered by this unlikely enemy. Everyday simple boats that could have been used for a day's fishing catch. And in a country that does not have a stable government, roaming the seas is not all that difficult.
I think the international community, and this is absolutely not for NATO, needs to look at the root cause, and that is political instability in Somalia. In the end, that is going to be the solution to this problem.
It's a problem that's gone on for decades and that's created a power vacuum across Somalia. With virtually no one stopping them, pirates use weapons and simple speedboats to get the job done. And they tap into the many villagers who say they're turning to piracy to make a living, as illegal fishing boats have plundered their water and destroyed their nets. Somali Coast Guards say they're unable to control the seas. And until the conflict that's gripped these fishermen's country for decades is solved, doubt remains about how much the world's leading naval powers can do to deter them. Zaina Awad, Al Jazeera.
There has been some success in efforts to stop piracy in the Gulf of Aden. These pictures from Kenya show the arrest of what were said to be 8 pirates paraded by authorities for the cameras. They were captured by a British naval ship in Somali waters. Officials say 2 pirates were killed in the operation. Well, we're joined by Michael Shank, a foreign policy analyst. Thanks for joining us. I mean, there's a lot of talk there of task forces, perhaps even a UN Security Council resolution to allow more robust action against pirates and so on. At least in the short term, is that the way to go?
No, as long as UN and AU respond with military force without simultaneously addressing the root causes. I think your report addressed one of the root causes, which is political instability. 2 others would include the humanitarian crisis in Somalia, and a third would really to have set up a robust maritime treaty and law enforcement policy so that the previous exploitation of the waters, the toxic dumping, wouldn't happen again. I mean, I think that initially instigated a kind of a Somali militancy on the waters, but until political instability, humanitarian crisis on the shores of Somalia that's displaced 1 million, that's killed 10,000 in the last 2 years, and then the exploitation of the waters. Until those 3 root causes are addressed, we're going to see only an escalation of piracy.
But you get the sense the penny has dropped, though. I mean, are you hearing the right sorts of initiatives being discussed at the moment?
Well, certainly not within the UN. And the UN and AU have had a hard enough time getting peacekeeping troops in Sudan to deal with the genocide in Darfur. Somalia, unfortunately, lies in the shadow of that. You know, much of the international community has simply forgotten about Somalia post-2006 when the Islamic Courts Union kind of rose up. We responded then, the U.S. responded then with military force. They're likely to do that again, unfortunately, until the transitional federal government is really addressed. A new unity government, a new unity cabinet is brought about, like they've pledged to do. The Djibouti brokered agreement pledged to do that. That would provide Somalia with some kind of infrastructure, political infrastructure, but unfortunately, Somalia is laid on the back burner for much of the international.
But interestingly, though, you've been quite optimistic in some of your writings about the political process that is currently underway in Somalia.
Well, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, which represents 7 East African countries, brokered in Djibouti this agreement between the transitional federal government and the Alliance for Re-Liberation of Somalia, which represents kind of the moderate Islamic movement within Somalia. They talked about a new unity government, new unity cabinet, which would represent kind of Somalia's diverse clan-based society. I mean, Somalia has never really done well with a centralized system. It's better off kind of on a local clan-based representation. Until the TFG really represents Somali's clans, you're not going to have a whole lot of buy-in from the populace for the transitional federal government. If the ARS, the Alliance for Re-Liberation of Somalia, and the TFG can come together, I think then Somali society will be able to get behind the political representation.
Do you think the US would be happy with that? I mean, that would suggest then that Islamic militants in the Somali government.
I mean, in 2006, right, the US government responded to the Islamic Courts Union as kind of categorizing them all as fundamentalists, extremists. Here, just like in 2006, you have both a moderate faction and you have an extremist faction. If we respond now as we did in 2006, which is to treat them all as extremists, we're going to see only an escalation of the conflict. In fact, the Alliance for Re-Liberation of Somalia is moderate. The Shabab is extreme, so we have to fetter out the different political standings of these Muslim groups, treat them differently, and recognize that Islamic political leadership is feasible and realistic option in Somalia.
Michael Shank, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.